After the tariff agreement between the United States and Mexico, Trump repeatedly declared the result of the economic threat on Twitter, but was repeatedly beaten in the face by the U.S. media and even exposed Trump's consistent negotiating style of reneging on his promises. Early on the morning of the 8th, Trump tweeted, revealing more details of the agreement. Mexico has agreed to buy large quantities of agricultural products from our patriotic farmers. Mexico will send 6,000 troops to their borders to solve the problem of illegal immigration. Quote. However, Bloomberg said agricultural trade was not mentioned in the U.S.-Mexico joint statement issued by the State Department on Friday night, and 3 Mexican officials said they were not aware of an additional agreement. The New York Times quoted people familiar with the negotiations between the two countries as saying that the agreement on illegal immigration between the United States and Mexico was reached several months ago, and Trump suddenly threatened to raise taxes on Mexico this time. He wanted to further expand the rights of the U.S. side on the basis of the original agreement and force Mexico to make concessions, but Mexico did not agree. Analysis of the report said that wantonly preaching victory may be looking for their own steps. Mexican official, I didn't know the agreement also involved trade in agricultural products. According to the Observer Network, according to the Office of the United States Trade Representative, Mexico had a trade surplus of about $6 billion with the United States in 2018. Mexico is the second largest agricultural export market in the United States. In 2018, U.S. agricultural exports to Mexico totaled $20 billion, with major exports of corn, soybeans, pork and dairy products. Mexico is also the largest importer of agricultural products in the United States. In 2018, the United States imported $26 billion worth of agricultural products from Mexico, including vegetables, fruits, alcohol and snack products. The picture shows the source of the agricultural trade between the United States and Mexico from 1990 to 2017, the United States Department of Agriculture report on the global agricultural trade system. On the 30th of last month, Trump intended to impose tariffs on Mexico on the grounds of illegal immigration in Mexico. But before the deal was reached, Trump tweeted on the 7th that the deal would also involve agricultural trade. If we can reach an agreement with Mexico, they will immediately start buying large quantities of our agricultural and sideline products. If not, Mexico will start paying a 5% tariff next Monday. Quote. After the agreement was reached between the United States and Mexico, Trump continued to disclose details of the agreement via Twitter on the 8th. Mexico has agreed to buy large quantities of agricultural products from our patriotic farmers, he wrote in all capital letters on Twitter. Quote. But Bloomberg said the statements of 3 Mexican officials contradicted Trump's claims, saying they had never agreed to buy more American agricultural products as part of the deal. This contradicts what Mr. Trump has said. At the same time, agricultural trade was not mentioned in the U.S.-Mexico joint statement issued by the State Department on Friday night. So far, the State Department, the White House and the Mexican Foreign Ministry have not responded to the authenticity of Trump's tweet. American media, find yourself a step down? In addition to mentioning agricultural trade, Trump also mentioned his achievements on immigration in his Twitter post on the 8th. In a tweet, he quoted Judd, chairman of the National Border Patrol Commission, as saying, "This is going to be a big deal because Mexico will use their strong immigration laws. In this way, immigrants will no longer be put into the United States." At the same time, Trump said 6,000 Mexican soldiers will be stationed on their southern border with Guatemala to fend off a wave of illegal immigrants from other Central American countries. In particular, he mentioned that there are still very few soldiers there at the moment. Did Trump really reach such a successful deal just 9 days after he launched the trade threat? The New York Times quoted people familiar with the negotiations between the two countries on the 8th as saying that the United States and Mexico had held many discussions on immigration several months before Trump threatened to launch a trade war against Mexico. Mexico has long promised most of the terms of the U.S.-Mexico agreement. According to a joint statement reached between the United States and Mexico on Friday, Mexico will deploy the National Guard throughout the country, giving priority to the southern border. The New York Times pointed out that when Nelson, then Secretary of Homeland Security, held secret talks with Mexican Interior Secretary Olga Sanchez in Miami in March this year, Mexico promised that they would do so. In December, the United States and Mexico also reached an agreement on immigration, requiring Central American asylum seekers to stay in Mexico and wait for their applications to be accepted before entering the United States. Why does an already negotiated treaty attract a tariff threat from Trump? Trump wants to continue to expand American interests on some of the core terms, according to an analysis by the New York Times of Trump's renegade negotiations. This time, Mexico won't say yes. During the past week of negotiations, Trump wants to push Mexico to accept a secure third country treaty, in which the United States has the right to reject asylum seekers if they do not seek asylum in Mexico first. Mexican Foreign Minister Ebrard said at a news conference after the agreement was reached between the United States and Mexico on Friday that Mexico did not agree to the Security Third Country Treaty proposed by the United States. Ebrard said that Mexico agreed to allow immigrants to stay in Mexico during the period of applying for asylum to the United States, and also agreed to strengthen the deployment of national security, but it is important that they say at the first meeting that there should be a safe third country. But we did not do so. Although he did not reach a secure third country treaty with Mexico as expected, Trump came to his Twitter show to publicize the victory of the US-Mexico deal and find himself a step down. Everyone is excited about the new deal with Mexico. Trump wrote. The New York Times said it was not clear whether Trump really thought the deal represented a new, broader concession, or whether he was aware of the limits of the deal, but under intense political and economic pressure, you can only accept it to save your face. As soon as the threat of tax increases against Mexico emerged, Trump was immediately criticized and pressured by world leaders, business leaders, Republicans and Democrats. They argue that Mr. Trump risks undermining key U.S. markets by doing so. The New York Times said 9 days of uncertainty led Trump to make concessions and accept the promise made by Mexico. Officials involved in the talks said the talks began on Sunday, when Acting Secretary of Homeland Security McAleenan had dinner with the Mexican Foreign Minister. A senior government official said Mexico agreed to act faster and more actively than before to stop immigration. Mexico has pledged to deploy 6,000 National Guard soldiers, more than they had previously promised. In principle, Mexico agreed that speeding up the process of immigration protection agreements could reduce immigration in the United States. But some U.S. officials, including Mr. Trump, are skeptical about whether Mexico will do so, whether it will keep its promises and, if so, whether it will really reduce immigration. On Friday night, Trump was briefed on the agreement by phone and asked his lawyers, diplomats and immigration officials if they thought the agreement would work. His aides say yes. But they also acknowledge that the wave of immigration is likely to continue, which is also realistic. Let's see if the agreement is valid. With that, Trump announced a trade agreement between the United States and Mexico. Subsequently, U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo said the U.S. government looks forward to working with Mexico to implement the agreement to reduce illegal immigration and make the border strong and secure.